shifting his tone toward Russia. He posted this on social media, quote, "Based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I am strongly considering large-scale banking sanctions and tariffs on Russia till a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. To Russia and Ukraine, get to the table right now before it is too late. Thank you." But that posture didn't last long. Hours later, he had this exchange with a reporter.
President Putin is bombing Ukraine.
Yeah.
Do you still believe him when he tells you that he wants peace?
Yeah, no, I believe him. I believe him. I think we're doing very well with Russia. But right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine, and I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards. They don't have the cards.
From large-scale banking sanctions to we're doing very well with Russia in just a few hours. Again, like in that Oval Office confrontation, President Trump said that Ukrainian President Zelensky doesn't have the cards. He also doesn't have military aid and some intelligence sharing, which the president has paused. Today, President Trump also suspended Ukraine's access to certain commercial satellite imagery purchased by the U.S. government. Ukraine uses the imagery to track Russian troop movements. Now, that news comes as Russia launched a major assault on several regions across Ukraine last night. 70 missiles and almost 200 drones were used. Two U.S. defense officials tell CNN that the U.S. is still sharing intelligence Ukraine can use to defend itself, but has, quote, scaled back sharing intelligence that could be used to go on the offense. Today, the president was asked about the attacks and the pause in aid.
Do you, Mr. President, think that Vladimir Putin is taking advantage of the U.S. pause right now on intelligence and military aid to Ukraine?
No, I actually think he's doing what anybody else would do. I think he wants to get it stopped and settled, and I think he's hitting them harder than he's been hitting them. And I think probably anybody in that position would be doing that right now.
And joining me now is John Bolton, who served as National Security Advisor to the President during his first term and as U.S. Ambassador to the UN in the George W. Bush administration. Ambassador Bolton, thanks for being here. How does this president go from talking about sanctions in the morning against Russia to essentially saying their strategy of pounding Ukraine is what anybody would do in this situation and taking advantage of the president's position?
Well, because I think he knew that the so-called threat this morning was totally hollow, as did Vladimir Putin. And he did it simply to try and show some kind of balance given the things he had said about Zelensky and the Ukrainians. If you look at the statement about the actual threat, he threatens three things: banking sanctions, sanctions, and tariffs. Now, I'll assume there's banking sanctions are just a subset of sanctions. I don't know why you would have two separate things.
But let's take
tariffs first. I don't understand it. Who knows? But on tariffs, Russian exports to the United States last year, the only year we have full statistics, were a little bit less than $3 billion, which is trivial compared to the total volume of U.S. trade with the rest of the world. And in fact, in 2021, in other words, the last full year before Russia's invasion in 2022, they were about $30 billion. So over this period of time since the invasion, U.S. imports from Russia have already shrunk 90%. So the tariff thing is effectively meaningless. Banking sanctions, you know, if there are banking sanctions we haven't imposed on Russia, I'd like to know why not. But in any event, as with really all the sanctions that have been imposed, and this is a general problem for sanctions, Russia has very successfully evaded, particularly the financial sanctions, moving through China's opaque financial system to get into global markets. So I think Putin completely understood that threat was totally hollow.
It seems now the U.S. is not doing cyber operations against Russia, according to reporting. We've mentioned new reporting that the Trump administration has suspended Ukraine's access to commercial satellite imagery purchased by the U.S. government, which comes after the pause, obviously, in U.S. military aid and the sharing of intelligence. How long do you think the Ukrainians can hold up without that kind of support?
Well, and it's a question of what other NATO members may be able to supply them. I think it's really despicable to stop providing the intelligence to Ukraine. This is all part of how Trump does business. It's all personal. I know this is hard to understand, that people think there's some policy behind it, but it's not. This is Trump believes that U.S. relations with other countries are embodied in his personal relations with the foreign heads of state. He thinks Vladimir Putin is his friend. He's never liked Zelensky, not since the famous perfect phone call in 2019. And this is what you're getting. But if I may come to this order suspending offensive cyber operations against Russia, this is a huge mistake for the United States. Forget Ukraine. This isn't going to make Russia more eager to come to the table. It's the rest of Trump's policies abandoning Ukraine and taking Russia's side that prevent Russia from coming to the table. Why should they negotiate when Trump gives them everything they want? And even more importantly, I think the cyber operators would tell you that part of what's important here, dealing with Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, any of our cyber adversaries, is to have what they call persistent engagement. If you're not always probing the Russians, you're giving them a chance to tee up their own offensive operations. If there were some deal here, a momentary truce, that'd be one thing. This looks to me like just another Trump giveaway.
And just so I'm clear, is it true that Russia is always probing the U.S. and civilian infrastructure and hospitals and electrical systems to try to see weaknesses?
I think that's clear. The Russians say, oh, it's not Russia. No, it's some troll farm operating under some fake name, some cutout operation. But they're doing it all the time. And really, I think we've improved our offensive game beginning in the Trump administration when we loosened Obama administration restrictions on offensive cyber. But cyber's like any other human domain. If you're not probing the adversary, you're taking risks for America. Again, forget Ukraine here. That's not part of the equation. This is backing away from dealing with the Russian cyber threat. I think it's a big mistake.
Ambassador Bolton, I appreciate your time. Thank you.